Hey, how's it going, guys? This is actually take two of this recording. Um, I did a full commentary over these games here on this tank and forgot to enhance the audio so it didn't sound so bad like my first video. Have a little patience with me, I'm really new to video editing. But today we're talking about the Centurion 7-1, the Tier 9 British medium tank. Um, a just absolutely great looking tank. When this tank came into the game fairly early on, I looked at this tank in particular, not even so much tier 10, and just saw, wow, that thing looks cool. It's got that basket on the back. It's got a big 105 millimeter gun up the front. It just looks like a modern battle tank, and that's because it was one of the first main battle tanks ever. Um, this first game here wasn't a, well, it was actually a pretty decent game in terms of score. Didn't do too well as a team, and artillery really discouraging camping there. All right, that was my fault. I should have been camping so hard. I'll do better next time. You gotta love it. Um, so the Centurion 7-1 been in the game a very, very long time. Not since release, even though Britain was in um, the original release of the game as one of the nations. They only had their tank destroyers and they had their heavy tanks. The tank destroyer line being the turretless ones, the AT-7, AT-15, things like that, leading to the Death Star. There was no Badger at the time. And then sometime after release, not too long down the road, they introduced British mediums. And these tanks when they came out, along with all the early counter releases of tanks, were very very different from what you already had in the game. A really exciting time in the world of tanks. There was always something really really new to look forward to, and not too many kind of super niche or gimmicky tanks. Just straight up new kind of tanks with different strengths and weaknesses that was already in the game. When this tank came into the game, you had, I believe the Russians were in there already, maybe, if not shortly after. So you basically had this, the T-54, the E-50, and the M-46 Patton. Hesh around here in the back of the DVB, which feels pretty good. We'll talk about Hesh in this video for sure. So compared to its contemporaries, this was a very, very different kind of tank. Tier 9 mediums back then, even the ones I just listed off were very, very different back then. And the primary example is going to be the guns. The M46 Patton, the E50, and the T54 all had about 220 pen or less on their guns, which was kind of the natural progression leading up to tier 10, full on tier 10 medium tank guns. And the Centurion arrived, the 7-1 here, and really just kind of blew the lid off that. It had and still does obviously the full on tier 10 medium tank gun. This is the same gun you get on the FE4 202 specifically, and more or less the Centurion Action X. It has 268 millimeters of pen, and when you hear what I just said about the other mediums and their penetrations at the time, being about 220 and less, 268 pen standard rounds and APCR at that, so crazy good shell velocity, was a radical departure from what everyone was kind of used to with tier 9 mediums. This thing was the best medium at fighting tier 10s and specifically heavy tanks and heavily armored tank destroyers. Um, the APCR pen on the Patton and the E50 had the same penetration pretty much as this thing had standard, and that really kind of set the stage for how you're going to play this tank in comparison to those other tanks. Because with great penetration comes crap DPM. This thing had, it had a 105 just like, excuse me, the E50 and the M46 with the same alpha damage. But it being that you have 268 pen, there had to be a downside. And the primary downside came in the form of its DPM. This thing fired at a base 5 rounds a minute rate of fire with 390 alpha, and that's just not good DPM. The Patton at the time had, I believe it was 6.45 rounds a minute rate of fire. I mean, you had a whole round and a half, faster rate of fire per minute than this tank, and that's substantial. And even the E50, which is never known for being a DPM monster, that had 6 rounds a minute rate of fire. So what that meant was, if you were fighting those tanks head on in this, as a lot of mediums tend to on medium flanks and such when they meet head to head, Sure, you could penetrate them, but they have more than enough pen to get through you, and they just have such a massive advantage in terms of DPM. So, was this a bad tank when it came in? No, not at all. It really just meant you're playing this quite a bit different than the other mediums, right? So, since you have bad DPM, but good accuracy and a really punchy gun, what did that mean? That meant you could play more as a sniper, certainly at the beginning of games, as well as going on heavy flanks, which was actually fairly attractive for two reasons, one pro and one con. The pro is the armor. The whole armor is not good on this tank. It's 120 or 121 millimeters. Slope back at we'll call it 45 degrees. It's okay. You'll bounce light tanks, but at tier 9, it's just not good enough to consistently bounce equal and higher tier, and even lower tier mediums, heavies, tank destroyers. But the turrets of this line are fantastic, starting at tier A with the Centurion 1, and you get 10 degrees of gun depression. So if you're playing on a map like Westfield or some of those maps where heavies tend to fight in the hills, you can go with them, you can rock with them. And the other reason that you'd want to go on the heavy flank is these tanks, when they came out, were slow. They were the slowest mediums in the game, at their respective tiers, anyways, and they had a top speed of 40 kilometers an hour. There are a lot of heavy tanks in today's world of tanks that go way faster than that. That was a Hesh round there for 515 damage, just trying to maximize the damage for the game into the Leopard 1. That's what those rounds were really good for. But these tanks were slow. You really couldn't contest early positions, like the hill on mines, rushing up there, for instance. Like, you just weren't going to get there. You're too big, you're too slow, you're just going to get killed, So, playing as a sniper early on or going down heavy tank flanks and supporting heavies because you had the penetration to get through enemy heavies, with no problem because you had tier 10 pen. And your view range when you're rolling with the heavies, you'd provide them with quite a bit of support, not just with your firepower, but spotting enemies. Because this tank has a base, I believe it's 410 meters view range. I've always ran optics on my mediums. I suggest you do too, with very few exceptions, because the spotting capability you provide to teams is really what helps you impact battles in these games. So, this was a very different kind of play style of a medium when it came out. And as games progressed, the mobility wasn't terrible. It had a good power to weight ratio. So, the way that a Centurion game would kind of evolve is you start out and you either snipe using your good accuracy and shell velocity, or you kind of go down a heavy flank. And depending on how the game pans out, you can then shift pretty quick to go support a flank that is kind of collapsing or just needs help, or exploiting the flank that you're winning or that you won to kind of get forward and kind of keep putting pressure on the enemy. You couldn't put a ton of pressure, really quick and get to a flank, but if you're continuously moving forward, stopping to shoot, moving forward, the mobility really isn't too much of an issue. And when this tank came out, this gun, it was the best of the tier 9s in terms of penetration and accuracy and stuff, but it really was a paradigm shift for how pretty much every tier 9 medium tank behind it would be designed. The tier 9 having the tier 10 medium tank gun is basically standard practice after this thing. I mean, the Type 61 has the STB1's gun, with obviously worse soft stats and such. The Leopard prototype has the Leopard 1's gun, very similar to this. Again, worse rate of fire, worse soft stats, but it's kind of common practice. The Skoda T50 and the T5051, and even the older tanks that I mentioned already, like the M46 and the T54, both those got changed to have the same guns as their tier 10 counterparts. So, it was a really kind of, I guess you could say, meta defining tank, because a lot of people really liked having the reduced DPM but more penetration capabilities of having a full-on tier 10 gun one tier lower. And I think it was I'm not going to say I'm not a fan of that. I really did like that, things like the M46 could have crazy good DPM and kind of mediocre penetration. I thought, it allowed for more archetypes and allowed for more variety of tanks. Now it's like, all your tier 9 mediums for the most part are just tier 10 lights, or tier light versions of their tier 10, I should say. And that's fine. They play well and given that the matchmaker today in World of Tanks, tier 9, I've said it before, tier 9 is tier 10, and I don't know how the hell that bounced off his lower plate that was sitting upwards. Tier 9 is tier 10. Every single game you see in this video is a tier 10 match, and I can promise you, every single match I played, and I've probably played about, I don't know, 8 or 9 matches to get some footage of this tank. Every match I played was tier 10. So, and I'm not being hyperbolic when I tell you, and if you play this game, you probably already know, but 95% of your tier 9 games will be in tier 10 matches. So really, it's kind of a necessity that wargaming has given all these medium tanks their tier 10 counterparts, guns, and that applies to a lot of the heavy tanks as well. Um, and the matchmaker's a different discussion for a different day, but these tanks don't suffer so much because of the bad matchmaking. You rarely see tier 7s. So also this tank differ, and does it differ, to this day? It has the British special. It has high explosive squash head. The premium ammunition on this tank is not heat. It is not AP or APCR. It does not give you more penetration. You will not get more than 268 millimeters of average penetration on a Centurion 7.1. Instead, you get your Hesh rounds. And what these are, if you don't know, and I'm sure most people do, but they're really high penetration, high explosive rounds, basically, right? These Hesh rounds have 210 millimeters of penetration, which is crazy, and 480 alpha damage. So you get 90 more alpha damage, and you still get pretty good pen. Don't forget 210 pen. That was similar to what tier 9 mediums used to have as standard, back in the day. And you can really take advantage of some light armored vehicles. That Leopard 1 in the first game you saw, it's really good to use on tanks like that. The problem is kind of how this tank holds up today in 2026. So it's not special anymore with its gun. Plenty of tier 9 mediums have tier 10 tank guns, as we discussed. Thankfully, it has been buffed a bit. It does have a bit better rate of fire, and the mobility is a big thing. You'll see in this replay here, I'm consistently doing 50 kph. They moved the speed of these machines up because they just couldn't keep up with how fast the game was changing and how fast games were going as people got better and new tanks were introduced. So 50 kph is pretty comfortable to play this thing at, for what it is. But the kind of biggest issue is that it's really a sad state of affairs to say that 268 pen it's just not enough in a not inconsequential amount of circumstances. Okay, you're finding things like a Type 5 Heavy, an angled mouse, the newly buffed E100's turret, quite a while back that got buffed up. The wonderful Warhammer tanks I always like to mention. There's a lot of cases where you just need that premium pen of 300 plus to get through tanks because they don't have weak spots, and even some tanks that are out in the open you can't really get through consistently. The Night Stalkers everyone knows and loves at the same tier is kind of one of those vehicles. If you guys have trouble with it, shoot in the gun. I've had some really good success just doing that, but the point stands that the reason the FE4202 is so much worse than the Centurion Action 10 is it doesn't get a heat round, and it has the same Hesh rounds as this thing does. And yeah, they're cool. Yeah, they're kind of dandy and useful, but at the end of the day, they're not useful enough to warrant their use over a 330 pen heat round or a better AP or APCR round. So you will struggle against certain heavily armored tanks that you'll meet quite often in the game. And that's something that this tank didn't used to do. So it's lost a little bit of its identity and its strengths. And the other thing that's really kind of a bummer about this tank and this gun is the bloom on it. I don't know if you've been paying attention to the replays. This thing is not an on-the-move shooter the way that Pattons are, or a T62 and the Russian mediums are, or a Leopard 1. You need to aim your shots. The bloom is ridiculous when you're rotating the hull and the turret. And I'm running stabs on this. You need to run stabs because it's for what this tank is supposed to be, kind of a tank that pops out, shoots, pops back into cover, or pops over a ridge and shoots. The gun hasn't really felt great over the years. Even back when they had the steady aim accuracy buff, it still just didn't feel good, and it still doesn't feel good. And you can see the aim time here. I mean, look how much bloom you start with, and the aim time is just not quite good enough. You can run a gun lane drive if you want. I think it's kind of strapped for slots of things you want, though. So I just run the stabs and call it a day. And Um, Even though the gun isn't great and the premium rounds are maybe not always useful, you can still do really good in this tank, and I really do like it. It's not just nostalgia; it is a good tank. You can see me find another Centurion 7-1 here, and this is not how you play a 7-1. You do not sit out in the open and hope your armor saves you, guys. What I'm doing here, using a little hill here, and popping out, taking a shot, and then popping back in, right? This is kind of classic 101 Centurion gameplay for any Centurion, whether it's the Action X, this tank, the Centurion 1, the FE4202, it's still basically a Centurion. That's how you want to play these tanks. This game, I'll be working these ridge lines really, really well. Something weird going on. This M60 and the other tanks around, they really don't spot me that often, even when I fire my gun. There's not a whole lot of bush cover, and they're not far away at all. And the M60 has really good base view range. I'm really not sure what's going on. I do have some camo on this tank to help reduce it because it's just kind of a necessity for mediums. So I'm not really sure why I had the success I did in this position of staying, unspotted, but kind of weird, but I'll take it. And we'll talk about that for a second too. The Centurion 7-1 doesn't have good camo. It's not horrific, but it's definitely not good. It's enough to warrant investing in so that you can help outspot some other mediums, definitely heavy tanks, but you're not too stealthy, so you need to be very, very keen of where enemies are and where you're likely to get spotted when you shoot. For instance, between me and this, I don't know how the hell to say that thing's name. I think it's called like the Shrek or something like that. I don't know. I know there's a lot of trees between us and a lot of foliage that helps conceal my tank when I fire. So wasn't really having a problem there with him. But you need to be really aware, where enemies are. And again, shot that M60, and he's not far away, and I don't have muffled shot or anything, and I didn't get spotted, so I'll take it. Um, but this tank in this line, they hold up pretty well in 2026. Um, the Centurion Action X, after quite a few buffs, that tank had the same issue of this one, where the gun did not handle well. I really did not like that tank. 2-3 years ago, it just felt bad. It felt like a worse pattern. You had some extra speed, but that was it. The gun just handled so poorly. And they fixed that gun. They didn't really change this one in terms of its handling. It still blooms like crazy. But the Action X now, I think it could easily be the best tier 10 medium tank in the game for my money. It's either that or like something maybe like a Marat or something more specialized like a Bat Chat, but that's a bit less flexible than those other tanks, right? So you have some really good things to look forward to after you're done grinding this. I think the Centurion 1 at tier 8. That thing has just been suffering like a dog. At 230 alpha, it's just not it, man. You have tier 8 mediums with 390 damage in this day and age, and that thing doesn't have a good rate of fire to compensate. The gun blooms all over the place. It's not even that accurate. Kind of the same issue with this tank. If you're not fully aimed, your shot's not going where you want it. And yeah, that thing, I used to love it quite a bit, but tier 8 mediums are in a rough spot, generally speaking, in this game. But you can see me working this ridge line here and in the replay. I mean, this is where you're so comfy with this tank. You can just pop out, snap a shot. Really wish that shot hit there. That 268, that thing is a terrifying tank destroyer. It has really crazy heat rounds, and it has ridiculous DPM. So I wanted to get him out of the game ASAP, so I kind of risked a shot here. And it leaves him on 1 health. And then I get my gunner killed for it. Um, Damn. So this is a pretty close game. We have a bit more health. They have some more tanks, and I'm really trying to make an impact here. I'm only a tier 9, and this is a tier 10 game, but this tank can impact games. And I know if I kill that 268 and this MV, what is it, MVY sitting out there, we kind of clear out the left side of the flank, and we can really kind of push the right side here. And I snap a shot there. I was so surprised that went in. I got spotted, and I just said, yeah, screw it, I may as well shoot. And that does not happen often with this tank. This is a very RNG dependent tank when it comes to snapshots. So thankfully it went in, and that's a very dangerous tank out of the game, thankfully. So we're just kind of working this flank. I'm working this ridge here, trying to get more vision on that MVY, and they saw these 2 tank destroyers here. I'm getting spotted here, and going forward is not a good idea on this side of the ridge because the rest of their team's on the north and the west side of the map. So I make a kind of a gutsy call here to go ahead and try to support this tank destroyer that's moving up here in a second. Um, there's also a Panzerjäger on the outside, and that thing is that's a really good tier 8 tank destroyer. In the right hands, it can be pretty deadly. And our tank destroyer, our grill killed their Death Star there, so I thought, oh well, this is going to be great. I can fight this in the ISU and really kind of get the game progressed here and probably win it. And all it starts kind of going wrong here with that first shot through the wall. I thought he was right on the other side, but I think there was just a bit of a hill that was covering his hole, and he's kind of in a good position. And I don't have the gun handling to roll out, snap the shot the way I want to, and fight him that way. So I decided to fall back, and really bad timing because right as I do this, the ISU decides it's time for him to push. So now, I probably could have kept going back if I kept this building between us, but I didn't want him to get an angle on me and shoot me for 750 damage. I was trying to preserve my health here, but this is a rough spot. That Panzerjäger is a pretty good player. He's gonna start hitting me in the sides, so now I'm just trying to bait the shot, and I'm pretty sure that was a high explosive round. He's not using a howitzer. That is the big gun on it, so he just said, "Screw it, I'll shoot HE." And we'll call it a day. And yeah, he's not outmaneuvering a Centurion 7-1. And then I thought I was going to be good. And then this tank, no clue where he came from. Didn't see him all game. It's that tier 8 premium. And he actually bounces off my side there. I was trying to angle in such a way that he would. But this is where you kind of see the DPM letting me down. Even though I do have a machine here clipping him out, I just couldn't reload in time. And, this guy tried to help me quite a bit. And I'll just kind of give a spoiler alert because there's going to be a cut here coming up. This game kind of came down to the machine killing that Panzerjäger, and then between the three of these tanks, a Death Star, a Maushin, and an FE405 fighting two tier 8s, one of which is a medium, they couldn't figure out. They just needed to hold their left stick forward and just go forward. They had health, they had armor, they have better guns. I mean, it was pretty painful to watch, and I was ripping my hair out at the time because I just had a really good game. I didn't want to lose, but kudos to these guys. We won on a technicality. We had two tanks at the end of the game, and they only had one, so it's team destruction, and that means that we get the win. So that's all that really matters. So, kind of closing thoughts about this tank. I think it's aged well. It's not amazing, but it's definitely it's been in the worst spot. And here's that cut to the end of the game here, and I'm looking at this machine saying, he has 800 health. You have a full clip. You have 900 health. What is he going to do to you? Just go forward, and he does it, but whatever, we won. But the Centurion 7-1, what can I say? It's a legendary tank in the game. It changed how tier 9 mediums would be kind of forever designed going forward. It has some good strengths. It has some pretty crippling weaknesses at times between the whole armor being bad with the ammo rack right there, and the way the gun handles, it puts me off. But at the end of the day, you can do very, very well here, and there you go, almost 6,000 damage with 4 kills in a tier 10 game. As a mastery badge with 4 kills and some assistance. And I like to take this tank out every now and then. I know I'm going to get into a tier 10 game, and yeah, that kind of blows, but what can I say? This tank looks great. It does feel good to do well in, and it leads to a even better version of what this machine wants to be, which is the Centurion Action X. So I'll be making a video on that at some point once I'm done covering kind of all the original tanks that came before it, and we'll go from there. So I hope you guys enjoyed the replays and the video. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and until next time, take care of yourselves.